Hello?
Hi, Marsha. We're going to get started in like 2 minutes. We're just waiting.
Whoops. Oh, goodness. Sorry.
Thank you guys for being so patient, for calling in and joining. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. We're just waiting for one more panelist to get on. Okay, it's about 5 after. I think we're going to go ahead and jump in to get started. And then Lanice can join us shortly as soon as she's able to get on. So if you guys see that Lanice is on and I miss it, please let me know so I can add her on as a participant. So let me go ahead and share to Facebook so we can, here we go, get started. Y'all look so cute. Oh, Joanna says she can't get in. I wonder if she's using the right link.
Yeah, because I had to use the number. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
I used the number on the graphic, and then it asks you to put your name and then your email address. And then I was able to get on.
So you couldn't click the link that I posted?
Oh, I didn't try from that way. I just tried from my phone.
Okay, but I'm also doing setting up the Facebook Live also.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Dana. Hi, Courtney. Thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and start and just open up in prayer just to kind of get tonight started and let the ladies know what we're here to do and what we hope to accomplish by coming together tonight. So let's get started in prayer. Lord, we thank you and we honor you for your goodness and your mercy towards us, God. And I just thank you for the opportunity to come and minister to your daughters, God, and share truth, to share revelation, God, and prayerfully, God, that your spirit will go before us and provide healing and provide clarity and direction and joy to your daughters. God, we thank you just for this unique opportunity to just share, God. To your word says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the power of our testimony. So we pray that as your blood has already gone forth, that our testimonies will bring you truth, honor, and glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay, so Lanice says she is on the phone. Okay, so let me see if I can move her from the phone over here. I don't see you, Lanice, on the phone. I had you before, but not anymore. So try to call in again and I'll get you on. Okay. So If this is your first time joining us, my name is Shantae Trescott, and I am the founder of Wives in Waiting. Wives in Waiting is a global ministry that is meant to assist women in honoring their commitment to God as the bride of Christ. So a lot of times people think that the ministry is just for single women, it's just for married women. It's none of those things. It's for all women, no matter what season of life that you are in. And so what we are going to do tonight is we have a program that's a branch of Wives in Waiting called Good Thing. So Good Thing 101 is for all women who are married 5 years or less, or who are engaged. So we definitely have everything for every single woman, and we just make sure that we are ministering to you in the best way that we can. And so we are decided to do this tonight because we get a lot of questions about marriage. We get a lot of questions about how to stay married, how to stay faithful, all kinds of things. So we decided to title tonight, Why Did I Get Married? There were some movies back in the early 2000s, I think, by Tyler Perry, probably a play also, called Why Did I Get Married? And it just kind of chronicled the journey of these 4 or 5 couples in just their journey in marriage, some of them in separation, some of them in loss, in death, in caring for their children, some in divorce. So what we are doing tonight is giving you an opportunity to kind of get a look into our lives, into some of our lives. All of us that we'll be sharing tonight, we're at different places in our journey. You'll hear a little bit about marriage, you'll hear about divorce, you'll hear about separation, you'll hear about being single. You'll hear about a lot of things tonight. So we hope that you just keep an open heart and open mind. I'll give the ladies an opportunity to introduce themselves so you can know who you are listening to tonight, and we'll kind of go from there. Okay? So feel free, like I said, to share tonight. Okay, there's Lenise. Okay, so feel free to share tonight with any woman who is married or desires to be married or is engaged or about to be married. So I want you guys to be open to what the Lord wants to do. And we'll kind of go from there. So Lenise, there we go. Now we got Lenise joining us too from the phone. So I'll let Marsha introduce herself first. Then we'll do Lenise, and then Shalonda can introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marsha Cisse. I am the Sister Circle leader for the Nashville, Tennessee Sister Circle. I have just recently got married, almost 2 months now. It'll be 2 months on the 6th of June, but I was previously divorced, so this is my second marriage, and I'm really happy to be here tonight.
Your turn, Lenise.
Okay. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble today.
Clearly.
Hello, everyone. My name's Lenise, and I'm sorry I'm in my car because I just left my youth. I have a youth group on Thursdays too. But I am divorced. I am the Sister Circle leader in Milwaukee, and I'm divorced, have not remarried yet. And so I'm excited to share a little bit with you all today about the process and the journey, and just being very honest and maybe even a little vulnerable to share some truth about my past.
Your turn, Londi. Okay, so I think Shalonda may be having some technical difficulties, but once she gets it together, she'll be able to join us and share a little bit about who she is. She has some kiddos probably running around. So we wanted to kind of get started tonight. Thank you again for all you guys joining us and that are sharing. We truly, truly appreciate it. So we wanted to kind of get started tonight to answer the question. Like, the title for tonight is, Why Did I Get Married? For real, for real. Why did you get married? So Lanice, out of all of us, she's not married currently, but she's going to talk to you a little bit about when she was married, what some of those motivations are. Like you said, I'm just being vulnerable tonight to answer some of the things that I think people are sometimes afraid to ask, especially in our faith-based environment. Like, we have questions because the truth of the matter is marriage is hard, right? It's not easy. It's not a picture perfect thing that happens. So when we talk tonight, it's coming from the perspective of been there. Not that we are experts or anything like that, but just to give you an opportunity just to ask the questions and get answers to the questions that you have always wanted to ask. So Lanice, when I ask you this question, I want you to just kind of give us the feedback of why did you get married for real? Like, why did you get married?
Okay, so to be honest, so I wanted to get married. There's a couple of reasons. The first thing is, I was not saved at the time. I knew I was raised in a church. I knew I was saved. I was not backsliding as well. So, right? And I didn't really seek out for direction anything of married because I wanted to have sex and didn't want the guilt with it, because I was raised in a church and guilty, like I'm.
Lanice is breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
That's better.
Oh, okay, I don't know what happened. I'm sorry. So I was just saying I got married for a couple of reasons. I wanted to be able to live freely and have sex and do what I wanted to do, and I didn't want the feeling of feeling guilty. And I did it because I was worried about what other people would think as well. And so I did it for not any of the right reasons, really. I did it for selfish reasons. I did it because I just felt like it was the right thing to do. And although I was not walking as a Christian, I knew the principles and kind of wanted to make sure that I was still following them. And because, especially my mom, I really honor her and I love her. And I was like, I just was worried about what people think. I was like, let me at least get married. Let me do this the right way. Whether I'm the right person or he's the right person, let's do the right thing. And so that is the real reason why I got married. I did love him, it wasn't that, but if in hindsight, looking back, I know that the reasons why I did things were not the right reasons. So that's the truth.
Okay. Shalonda, are you back? Can you hear us? We can't hear you, ma'am. Okay, Marsha, let's move on to you. Why did you get married? And I know you're coming from the perspective of being remarried also. So we want you to tell us about why you got married the first time and why you got married the second time.
So I got married the first time because I was in a complete broken state. And mostly because I kind of like Lanice, I was raised in church, so I knew right and wrong, and I had gone through a state of just perpetual relationships with guys where for whatever reason I was in a relationship with them. They didn't necessarily want to be, like a legit couple. I was like a serial or a monogamous like dater of men who would not commit to me. And so just as a result of that, through my early 20s and my early and mid 30s, I was just repeating the same cycle after cycle, like meet a guy, date him, sleep with him. He didn't really want to commit to a relationship. And so after just years of doing that, I ended up in a relationship with my well, my ex-husband, and I was like completely broken. But I was like the girl who went to church, who knew the word, but just really hadn't allowed God to just completely like heal me. I got married when I was 38, so my biological clock, if you will, was ticking, and my friends were getting married. And in some parts of my heart, I felt like because I was trying to do right, that somehow like God owed me a husband, and I didn't. I wasn't patient enough to allow him to. Well, I was not in a place where I really would just be honest with God and just say, like, I'm broken. I desire marriage. I want to be healed. I thought that my healing was in my own hands, and that being married would somehow heal me. And so I was in a toxic relationship with my ex-husband. And I knew going into it that I should not have gotten married for a number of reasons. But the main reason to me was like, if I'm with somebody, then this somehow validates me. If a man is willing to marry me, that somehow completes me, or that somehow gives me some form of identity. Because even in my brokenness, I know that I didn't know who I was. And so my marriage, and I say all that to say that if that is a woman's focus and reasoning for getting married, I can absolutely positively assure you that you are in for way more than you could ever bargain for. My marriage lasted approximately 4 months, and it just all came to a head, spiraled just completely out of control, because neither one of us were in a situation to be married to each other. And so, like I said, my marriage lasted all of 4 months, and it was kind of like the best thing and the worst thing that could have happened to me, because going through that situation and really coming like running head smack dab into my brokenness, it literally threw me to the feet of Jesus. And that was what it was like, the straw that broke the camel's back. And that was really where I was able to look at myself and see what situation I had gotten myself into. And it really, like, I was heartbroken, and it really forced me to lay at the feet of Jesus and really allow him to heal me. And praise be to God, I know that having had that situation happen to me, that is what led me to be able to make the decision now to marry my husband, because I absolutely positively know that that the man that I'm married to now is the person that God intended for me. And I could only recognize that because I had spent time with the Lord. I let him completely rip me apart in order to heal me, so that I would be able, and I would have a clear understanding of what it means to be married, what it means to be a wife, what's the purpose of marriage, and just allowing him to unfold that. So this time, I don't think I would have been able to make the decision that I made to marry my husband this time had I not gone through the situation that I went through the first time. So.
We're gonna give Shalonda a chance again to see what's gonna happen now. Shalonda, can you hear us?
I've been able to hear you guys. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
So if you want to introduce yourself and let us know why you got married.
Okay. I'm Shalonda Richardson. I am a leader. I am the Raleigh, North Carolina Sister Circle leader. I also lead Good Thing 101 with Shantae. I've been married for 8 years. And the reason I got married, so I met my husband in college. Well, I really met him when I was in high school, but we started dating when I was in college. And we went through, I guess, a series of events that could have broken us, and we always came back to each other. And I'll start off with, I didn't like him when I first met him. Not that he wasn't attractive or anything like that, but he just wasn't my type. and I was a Jesus girl that liked thugs. So God was probably preparing me that I wasn't gonna end up with a dope boy. But at any rate, we built a friendship. We went through, I guess, life together for a little while, and then he asked me to be his girlfriend, woman, whatever. And we went through college. He's a type of guy that believes in having things set up. So we went through college with me pestering him about going ahead and making, about going ahead and making me his wife, and we abstained, sometimes fail, and got back together. And I guess the reason why we got married is because after seeking God, we realized that we were supposed to be together, and we made plans and sought God to make that happen, for lack of a better word. So yeah, that's why we ended up married. We both believed that it was God's will for our lives at that time. So we've been together now 15 years, but we've been married for 8.
So my story is kind of similar to Lanice's to start off, and then praise the Lord for grace, right? So I was not raised in church. If you've followed Wives in Waiting for any amount of time, I was not raised in church. My family went to church kind of in my early teens, but as far as teaching about a relationship with God and having him be the Lord and Savior of your life, I didn't make that decision until later, actually after marriage. So when we got married, I had no idea what marriage was about. I was not saved and surrendered to God at that time. So definitely did not know the point of marriage. I just knew that I loved him, and I didn't want my life to move on without him. So we got married, and I will say this, like, even though we really had no idea what we were doing, initially, I praise the Lord for wise counsel, because our pastor at that time who married us, he really kept us together when things would be unraveling. And that was a lot, especially in the first 2 years, that we would go to him and have to get counsel on everything, just because we didn't know how to deal with life. I want that to frame tonight's conversation, that none of us are coming from a place of perfection, instead of knowing it all or having all the answers, because that's definitely not the case. Like, we want to share some of the things, the struggles that we've had, as well as some of the victories we've had, too, because I think, let's say, in the kingdom, we can get so discouraged because we have these pictures of what we think marriage is supposed to be, and then we get married and we're married to another flawed human being, and it doesn't happen the way that we think that it should happen, and then almost immediately we're running to get a divorce. There are statistics that talk about that in the church, we're getting divorced at the same rate that people that are not saved. And Marsha and Lanice talked about, like, their experience with divorce as well. So we want to help you, let's say, help and walk alongside you in some of these things. So we talked about why we got married, but I want to hear from the ladies, like, what's the best thing about marriage? What is something that you love or loved about being married? And whoever wants to take it on can.
I guess I'll
Well,
go.
I can go.
Go ahead, Lanice.
I can go first since I'm no longer married. But I definitely want to shed some light on being married and then not being married, and some of the struggles that I had when we decided to dissolve the marriage. It was really hard because I understand, even then when we were married, I understood that two was better than one. We got so much accomplished together. We could do so much more together, and it was fun. And I appreciated the fact of having someone to lean on, having someone that cared about you and that cares about your success, your failures, and all that. And especially when I first got when we got separated at first, there was traditions that we had together that I no longer had anymore. And so I really enjoyed that part of being together and having a companion compass. So if anybody is on here and maybe you are divorced and you're not married yet, I just want to encourage you that it's okay to mourn. You know, a lot of people would try to discourage you or say just get over it or move on. But you can mourn the loss of that. And I think it was important that I mourn the fact that it didn't work out because there were parts of me that needed to be healed. And if I didn't allow myself to mourn and if I didn't allow myself to deal with the stuff and the things that I missed and that I enjoyed about that, I think that I would not be in a state of being whole. So I think it's just important to kind of understand that that's okay and that you want to be set free from that so that you can open up and prepare your heart for what God has meant for you. And He's a restorer. And so although there's a lot of things that I did love about being, it's a blessing. You know, marriage is a blessing, especially when you do it unto God. And God, you got married and you weren't saved at the time, but you are still married now, and now you're committing your marriage and you understand it's a ministry as well. It's a blessing. So, when two people come together. So that's kind of my point of view from my thought of moving forward and the beauty of it. So I see beauty in it, even though I'm not currently married. I'm not bitter. I'm not anything, but I think that's because I took the time to deal with that which I did lose.
I love that Lenise said, like, you have to mourn when your marriage ends, because we know biblically, right? The Bible says that let no man tear apart what God has joined together. And the reality is that sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes that happens for whatever reason. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, because I know sometimes, again, in the kingdom, we make people feel like divorce is the ultimate sin against God. And while it does break God's heart, like anything else that He did not plan, that doesn't disqualify you for things, but it also makes we push people into this like shroud of darkness. We push them into the corner that they are no longer worthy. And if you're divorced, or that you used your one time up to get married, and that God is so displeased with you, or that you're supposed to just, you know what, I got to devote all my time unto the Lord and be at the church all the time, and you don't have an opportunity to heal, you don't have an opportunity to grow, you don't have an opportunity to move forward from that. But anytime there is a death of any kind, and the end of a marriage is the death of a relationship, you do need to take the opportunity to mourn. And like Lenise said, like, we make people feel like, oh, if you miss them, that something is wrong with you. That's not necessarily the case. We are human beings, right? We are made in the image of God. We are being perfected until He returns. But you're going to miss that person. If you gave them any amount of you, you are going to miss what they meant to you in your life. So I'm really glad that Lenise said that. So Marshall, for you, what's your favorite thing? What's the best thing about being married?
Oh gosh. The best thing about being married is it's like having a relationship with a person where I am completely free to be who I am. And understanding that getting to experience life with another person, being who I am, knowing what my purpose is, knowing what God has called me to do, and being with somebody who affirms that and wants to help me become who God intended me to be. And so that's something that I didn't have in my previous marriage. I completely changed who I was because I thought that was what you do. You know, when you love somebody, you become who they want you to be. And so in my first marriage, at the end of my first marriage, if somebody had asked me, like, what do you like and who are you? Like, I couldn't have told you that. I couldn't have told you, you know, even down to the way I wore my hair. Like, I couldn't have told you what I liked. But this time, I am completely free to be who I am. And that is very liberating. It's liberating. Not that I wasn't myself before I met my husband, but it's almost like it's been amplified it's been amplified now, and his love and his friendship and his companionship has, even, I know people like, dog, all that in 2 months, but really, when it's the person who God has for you, I think you do experience that. And so that is, I'm learning, I'm enjoying knowing who this Marsha is, if that makes sense. So yeah.
So for me, mine's is kind of, I'm sorry, can y'all hear the kids in the background? Sorry, hold on one second. Sorry. But for me, mine's is kind of like Marsha's. For me, it's like being able to do life with my very best friend. Like, he knows the intricate details of me and still loves me. Like, things that I was scared to face on my own. Like, a part of marriage. A part of marriage is being vulnerable or having a mirror with you. Because although some people ascribe to this way of life, you don't get to close the door. You don't get to go somewhere else. You don't get to, lay down your marriage just so that you can be in your feelings or feel some type of way about something. So although it's caused me to grow up in ways that I probably never expected, it's probably been the best thing for me. So being able to it has been the best thing for me. Being able to do life with my very best friend. Like, I have girlfriends, Shantae's my homie, all of us, we get together and powwow, but there's absolutely nothing for me like being able to share my whole life. He's the father of my kids, seeing him in that capacity, like those type of things that I never imagined would bring me joy. They give me joy, and being able to do it with him, I can't imagine doing it with anyone else. So marriage gives me that buffer, so to speak, where I can be my complete self, completely naked and unashamed, and not worry about how I look to him, and not feel ashamed of what I look like. It's funny because I love like oatmeal pies and all the Little Debbie's with the swirls. So being able to show my swirls and somebody still wants to eat me, for lack of a better word. So yeah.
Well.
Well, then, okay. Well, welcome to the
let me sip my tea over here.
Welcome to the hangout. I think like the next thing that I was going to ask is, what's the hardest part about being married? And for me, those are probably one and the same. My favorite thing and the hardest thing is just being forced to see yourself. So I'm just already give y'all the disclaimer. Y'all know I'm emotional anyway. Then add in the fact that I'm extra pregnant, so ignore the tears. Okay. It's being able to see yourself regularly, because I noticed that, prior to being married, there were so many things that I wanted to change about myself, and I could immediately put those things into action. And so when you get married, like Shalonda said, being vulnerable and seeing who you are in someone else, because if you go back to when the first marriage started, Eve was taken from Adam. She was a piece of who he was. And when you come together in marriage, you are drawn to some of who you are in the other person too, in the good and the bad. Some of the things that you don't necessarily care for might be drawing you to that person, and some of the things that you love about you. So being able to have a mirror regularly to remind myself, like, before I point something out about him, let me really see what that means about me. Is it really an issue that I have with him, or is it something that I don't like in myself that he is triggering or he is causing? And then like Shalonda said too, like having someone who loves everything about you. I mean, even when you struggle to love those things about yourself, there is nothing like it. And to know that relationship is how God loves his church is like, it really is indescribable, and it's really difficult to understand, because as women, we sometimes think we have it together, and we don't, because we're humans and we're flawed. And to know someone is still choosing you every single day, because marriage is choosing them every single day, in spite of some of the things that they do, that are going to get on your nerves, right? Like we're talking being real tonight. There are going to be things, and when I say there are going to be things, I don't mean abusive things. I don't mean things that pull you away from God or pull you away from the plan for his life or your family's life, but just things that may be irritating when you're dating, and when you get married, it's like life or death. That it's someone that you choose to love. And in 2018, choosing to love someone in all their flaws is not popular, right? The pictures are cute to have the relationship goals, with the things that build those pictures. We don't talk about that stuff. We don't talk about when they're letting you down, when they're not meeting your expectations, even when your expectations are rooted in Christ. We don't talk about that. Or when they are not putting you first, they're not living up to who you thought they were. You have to still choose them. And that's hard. That is really, really, really hard. And we get into a place where we think that doing some of those things make us more like God. And then sometimes the heart that we have behind it make us the least like him. So I want to give the ladies opportunities too. Like, you talked about what the best thing was about marriage, but what's the hardest thing? Like, what's the hardest thing about being married?
I think
I can go first.
Go ahead, Lanice.
Sorry. For me, one of the hardest things was seeing myself. And especially now, because I've really had time to reflect. The hardest thing was for me not to be selfish and not only think about what I want, what I need, my goals, me, and really think about we. I struggled with that a lot, and struggled with an independent spirit. I'm trying to think of how to really word this, where it's okay to be who I am, but allow him to be who he, like being the head of a house. And when you're used to just making all the decisions on your own, doing what you want to do, I struggle with that. And just really looking over that and looking backwards. That was really hard for me to really let go of feeling that my way was the best way, my way was the right way. So that was hard for me. And it was really my selfishness. Those are some things that was difficult for me when I was married. I don't know if we lost Shalonda.
I think we did. She's on struggle street tonight. We're going to pray for her. Marsha, what about you? The hardest thing?
I would agree with Lanice. I was single for 6 years after I got divorced. And so I was in this perpetual state of like, taking care of me. I'm working, I'm, being grown woman, doing that and being able to assimilate into this marriage where I understand that this marriage is not about what I can get from a person. It's about what I can give. And so just changing my mindset to understand that this ain't about you. You know what I mean? I'm a part of it, but it's not solely about me. And so just keeping that in the forefront of my mind to say, you've entered into this. And so you take you off of the shelf, and it is selfishness. And sometimes as being an independent woman, we hide behind that. Well, I was so used to doing whatever, but sometimes at the root of it can be selfishness. And so that has been the thing that I have to constantly remind myself, that I am a part. I'm no longer one. I have, one by myself. I have joined myself with someone, and it can no longer be, the Marsha show. So that's been probably the most difficult thing. Yeah.
Well, I think like one of the things that Lanice said too, she said letting someone lead the household, right? So we have a lot of those sayings and terms that we use. But what does that mean, right? Like, because let's talk reality. Like, the reality is that right now, women are out earning men by a lot, not just a little bit. They're more educated than men are. So that leads to other things, right? That you may establish a life where you own your own home and you are the primary breadwinner and you are the decision maker. And then if you add in the fact that maybe you have had some children prior to getting married, like what does having him lead the household, like what does that actually mean? Like, and when you realize what it means, how does that play a role in the marriage? Because what I want to make sure we say too is everybody's household is going to look different, right? The reality is if you are honoring God in your marriage, then that's all that matters. Like, nobody else has to say like, oh, that's the right way to do it. Oh yeah, I agree, and give you kudos and all those other things. But what does it mean to truly have someone else leading your household? What does that mean? Marsha, you can go ahead.
So it means like having somebody else lead the household for me is understanding that my husband is the head. Like, he's the head of the household, and head doesn't mean like he just comes in and dominating and, like I'm subservient to him. But it does mean that God has entrusted me to him. And so as he follows God, then I can trust and follow him. And I think it can look like I won't say what we decide it looks like, but I think there does have to be some understanding about what that looks like in your house. Like, leading doesn't mean that you are doing all of the housework or whatever, and he's the one that's doing whatever. It looks like whatever you guys want it to look like, but it's still in order. It's still in order. Like, he still seeks God for the direction for your family, for the vision for the family, for the vision for the children. And he sets the tone and pace for the house. But you do make decisions together about that. And I think sometimes that leading, it seems like it gives the impression like that the wife doesn't have a say, or that you don't have input to how things go. But trusting him to make decisions, ultimately make the decisions for our house, is him leading.
So I think super important. Oh, go ahead, Lenise. Go ahead.
I would agree, especially just understanding in my instance, and for me, it means that he has a voice too. It's not just my voice, it's not just my way, but ultimately, do I trust him? Do I trust him enough to make decisions? Do I trust him enough to follow his vision? And so I think it really, for me, it's being able to have that trust factor there. And again, because I am divorced and I've had time to reflect, and especially because I wasn't really in the will of God then, I wasn't able to submit to God. I wasn't able to do what he asked me to do. So I definitely wasn't ready to submit to any man. I definitely wasn't ready to do what any man want me to do if I couldn't even listen and follow God. And so, and trust God with my life. I mean, I think it's just, that's why I love Wives in Waiting, because it's a setup, man. It's a setup. But it prepares you, like, do I trust God with my life? Do I trust him even when I feel like I want to do something different? And the man that God has for you, he's going to love you like that. And so the thing is not about, it has to be my way. The thing is about, it has to be God's way. And because I trust the man that God has put in my house and my life, he's going to listen to my voice. I don't have to worry that my voice is not going to be heard, because it will be heard. But in the end, what he decides and we decide together, I have to trust to follow that. So that's what I kind of feel like it should be. Now knowing better.
Right, now you know better, so you do better. So I think there's a couple of things that come into, like, the man is leading the household, because I think sometimes we throw that around, and everything that Lenise and Marsha said is so accurate, because we have this picture in our mind, I think a lot of times, that leading your household looks like your pastor. because that's a picture of he's shepherding the flock, and our husbands are supposed to shepherd our souls and shepherd the souls of our children. And all of those things are true, but the reality is we try to give things as a reward to our husbands that are actually a right to them, just based on the role they have in the household. Like there is divine order and authority. And it's funny, like right now there's a couple of different things happening culturally, and we have social media, and we give voice to things that maybe we would not have had an opportunity to give voice to prior to this digital generation. And so we feel like because we have the ability to chime in and give our opinion and give our say so and what we think should happen in one environment, we think that that should carry on into another. And I'm a firm believer is you practice how you play. Most of y'all know my husband is a basketball coach. So you're not going to practice one way and then show up on game day and do something different. And a lot of our interactions at work, with our family, with our children, with our friends, really set the tone, like Lenise said too, and with God, set the tone for how we allow someone to lead our home. Like leadership comes when you have people that follow you. So if you don't have anyone that's following, of course he's not a leader. But we have to first look introspectively of why did you get married? Why did you marry this man if you did not trust his leadership, like Lenise said? And if things change, because they do, you know, people are one way when you're courting, and sometimes at the beginning of marriage, and they flip the script on you later on. But the reality is you have to check your heart, and are you allowing him to lead in a way that he is capable of leading? Like we know some things about them. We do fix-a-bay, and we're like, oh, I know he doesn't have this. I know he doesn't have that, but I'm gonna go ahead and marry him. And after I marry him, you know, I'm expecting all these things to change. But if he was irresponsible, if he was not a man of character, if he was not a man of integrity prior to you marrying him, you praying for God to change him into a man of character and integrity, God is looking at you like, first of all, you should have used wisdom, boo. Second of all, it's not up to God's prerogative to say, I'm going to change this man to make him into someone that he was never meant to be to begin with. He's not submitted to me. He's not yielded to me. I'm not saying the Lord is not a miracle worker, but your husband has to be a willing participant. And it's important for us to realize that too, that sometimes we are expecting things that are not going to happen. We're expecting God to do things that he is not going to do because it's not in his character. The Bible talks about if you're unequally yoked, and I'm so tired of us misquoting that all the time. That's not just about marrying an unbeliever. A yoke, when it's set on you, it's that everyone is able to carry their fair share of the weight in the relationship. If you marry someone who is not equipped to carry his fair share of the weight in the relationship, he's not going to wake up one day and say, oh, you know what? Let me do that. It does not happen that way. So being able to allow someone to set the tone for your home is based on the plan that God has for his life. So he doesn't just have to seek God for you and the direction for your family, also for himself. That's super, super, super important. I want to go to kind of to caveat something. How can you be a helpmate to a man who doesn't want or trust your help? How can you be a helpmate to a man who doesn't want or doesn't trust the help that you offer to him? And I'm gonna start first on this one because been there, done that. Okay, so remember when we talked about when we got married, I was not saved. Neither one of us were. And I had a lot of baggage from my past of how I would do things, like when I would get afraid or when I would get uncomfortable or kind of pushed in a corner. I had a tendency to try to reel things in a way that I can control them. So whether that was the fact that I would go and hide some money, or I would reach out to someone from my past, whatever the case may be, I was really stuck. I had not been delivered basically from the things that had haunted me in the past. So moving into marriage does not fix those things. It just carries on and includes another person. You have to choose to submit that to God, and also the discipline to stay delivered as well. So as a result of some of my own actions and some of my own shortcomings, I position myself in a place to not be trustworthy anymore. I said, if you followed Wives in Waiting long enough or been in good thing, you know that one of my favorite scriptures is Proverbs 31:11, that says that her husband has full confidence. We talk about the virtuous woman all the time, but that her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. For someone to have full confidence in you, it's because you have proven yourself to be trustworthy, that you are someone that he can have confidence in. And I had not done that. So now we're trying to turn the corner and move forward in our relationship, and we surrender our lives to the Lord. And I'm trying to offer up my wisdom and offer up my advice. And my husband is like, girl, sit down somewhere. I don't trust you. And the reality is I had to earn his trust back because I had lost. Some of you are not necessarily in that position. Some of your husbands are just dealing with some woundedness from their past that they already have a mistrust for people. And so now you're put in a position that you're just like everybody else until you show that you're not. So how do you deal with that? How do you help someone who doesn't want or doesn't trust your help? And it's being consistent in who you say that you are. A problem that we have a lot of times, especially as believers, we will say, oh, Lord, do this and Lord, do that. And then we try to seek to manipulate things or try to control a situation that we really have no control over. So we're saying one thing, but we're doing something else. That's not how you win someone over. And I'm not even promoting that you marry someone that doesn't trust you, but you may find yourself in this situation. So I'm just being real. Show that you can be trusted. Show that you can work. We don't do secrets in our house. We know passwords. We know bank accounts. We know all of that stuff. Because for us, that's how we maintain a level of trust where we can be open, honest, naked, and ashamed. That may not be for everybody, but you need to be really realistic about where your marriage is and where your husband is. Shalonda, I don't know if this is something you want to talk about too, especially about your journey with being at home for a while.
So, I guess I haven't really been that open about it, but of course, my husband and I, like I said, we've been together for a little while, and we were married. When we first got married, we were apart for a few months, just because I was still finishing up school. My husband had taken a position in Indiana, so we were apart, and we didn't get to see each other probably as frequently as we had wanted to. So I graduated from college. I moved to Indiana. I instantly, I suppose, become a stay-at-home wife. So I take care of the house in Indiana, but a position comes available and we move back to North Carolina, and I'm still a stay-at-home wife. And I guess I didn't, well, not I guess I didn't. I didn't steward that opportunity well. A whole lot of people fancy stay-at-home wife-ism. I'm making that up. As a thing, but if you're going to be in that position, my thought is that you should steward it well. So I shouldn't be laying on the couch, Facebooking, tweeting all day. Come home. I mean, dinner is prepared, but there's still clothes everywhere, and that sort of thing. So if I'm going to be a stay-at-home wife, or if we're put in that position where we're able to, we should be storing our home well, especially if our husband is giving us the privilege of being able to do that. We should be providing something to our household. We should be maintaining our household. So I get pregnant, I have a child, and then it makes me more responsible, but I get bored. So I say I want to go to work. And then I decide that, hey, this is still boring for me. It's not changing anything. I'm just going to punch a clock for somebody else. But what I didn't realize is that while I was at home, I should have been using that opportunity a little bit better, because my husband was looking at my actions, I suppose, to determine if I was benefiting at home by being at home. And I was not, because I was laying at home tweeting and Facebooking, and add to that, my husband's not really a social media person at all. So if I'm spending all of my time doing that and home is not taken care of course he has an out with that. So I said all that to say, is our actions also can lead us to be characterized as not trustworthy. If we are given the opportunity, we are stewarders of our home, whether we like that or not. That's our position. God has made us nurturers of our home and helpmeets to our husband. And if I'm not helping meet a need, then I'm out of position. So that can distort his view of us, and it can lead to mistrust. So I said all of that to say that I forgot where I was going, actually. Sorry. But I said all that to say that we have to make sure that we're stewarding our portion well. And um, if we do find ourselves in positions that we're constantly not doing so, then of course, like anyone, if my husband was saying he was going to work but the bills weren't being paid, then I would have an issue with that. So that's the same, I suppose, mindset that we should have when we're making sure that we're trustworthy in our. I'm sorry, my mind just went somewhere and I was going somewhere with that, but I am not able to pick my thought back up. Sorry,
Just
my.
pray for her. Clearly, she has 3 children and she's on struggle sheet. Marsha,
So the question is like, tell me the question again.
how can you help someone as a helpmate? Like that's supposed to be our role, right? How can you help
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
who doesn't want or trust the help that you're trying to provide?
I would say it's a combination of kind of what you guys have all of you have said about showing yourself trustworthy, but also understanding like I'm a nurse by profession, right? So I've been a nurse and I'm a mother. I raised the son, and so I have to understand that I am not my husband's mother, nor am I his boss. You know what I'm saying? So I have to understand that there is a way that you can help, but it may not be the way that you want to help. Because see, that's the thing. It's like if I want to just tell him you need to do X, Y, Z, dot, 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 that may not be the time or the situation to do that in. Sometimes help will mean you speak up and you say thus and such. Help may mean you keep your mouth shut and you tell Jesus about it. But we don't want to do that. We want to just jump right in. And if he would do what I said, or if he had listened to me and dot, dot, dot. But I'm learning to, when I see an opportunity or if there's an opportunity that he may need my help, you ask, what is it that I can do or how can I help? Or if there's times where I feel like he would be resistant to what I said, then you can always tell Jesus and ask the Lord to give you the strategy. Or it may just be one of the wisest things my mentor told me is she said that sometimes you may want to help, but the Lord may tell you to be quiet because he's working on your husband. You're not his God. And so it's a combination of things. And I think you have to know your husband. You have to know what he will be able to receive and what is going to like shut him down and he won't be able to hear anything that you say. So I think it's a combination of those things. And especially the most important thing to me was showing my husband that I'm trustworthy. I don't know if you guys know this, but my husband is not here in the United States. He's in Africa. And so I could not, although he is not here, I've made it a very big point to have my accountability circle around me to make sure that I'm not still living my life like a single woman because he's not here. He wouldn't be wiser if I went and, spent X amount of dollars or went and bought shoes or went and did whatever because I'm like, well, you're not here. I could just be doing what I want to do or whatever. But like Shantae said, you have to practice, like you're going to play. So even though he's not here, I still make it a point to do the things so that him on the other side, he sees that I am trustworthy. And so that if it comes a time where he needs my advice or he needs my help, he knows that I'm trustworthy and he can trust my decision making or he can trust my insight to whatever the situation that he may be facing. So
right, because I think when we did a kind of a marriage hangout before, maybe 2 years ago, I remember one of the questions we got was like, if you were not being physically intimate with someone, how do you show them that you're going to be a good wife? And this is everything that we're talking about now. The reality is like anyone can give a man sex. Like if you have all the parts to do it, you can give a man sex. But the reality is showing that you are trustworthy is a part of the courting process. And I think sometimes we miss that we have given them opportunities to mistrust us, and we don't even realize it. Like I said, not being a woman of your word is really important. I love when Shalonda said, like, if your husband tells you I'm going to work every day, but your lights are off, something is not adding up there. And if you share with your husband that you are going to cover him in prayer, but everybody knows all his business, that's not really adding up. And I love what Marsha said, you have to know your husband to know what kind of help he's going to receive. That's important, because I know that we are in get married quick phase. And I'm not even just saying that about a time perspective. We are not taking the time to learn who we are making a covenant with. And that is really indicative of our relationships with God. Because some of us aren't even learning these men, and we know them for a long time. It's not a matter of the time period. It's what you are investing in getting to learn who you're going to submit to. Because I think a lot of times the stuff that we are surprised by are things that they have been waving in front of us for the longest time. But there is this rush and this push to get married. Yes, somebody said on Facebook, we're in love with the idea of love. We like what it looks like, but not really what it entails. Because the reality is love looks like a bloody cross. It doesn't look like a wedding in a wedding dress. But we don't take the time to learn who we're submitting to. So then we find ourselves surprised by some of the decisions they make and how they make those decisions, and who they're connected to, and how they view marriage and how they view a wife, because we haven't taken the time to learn them. Learn your man. And even if you are already married and you're finding yourself in this strength, like, learn who he is, learn how he views things, learn his perspective on life. It's not just about a political affiliation or a religious denomination. How does he view life? How does he view life in light of what's currently happening? Do you have a leader that is able to lead in the situation that we find ourselves currently in? And as a woman, we are so accustomed to taking the front seat because life has put us in situations where we feel we have to. It's so difficult to try to pull the reins back. And some of that mistrust that we sometimes are experiencing are because we think we always have to get it done. Like, we think it's our job to make things happen. Because that's what the world says. I posted a status the other day about this message that we can have it all as women. And that's not true. So if we're getting this false message of you can have it all, you can have a bomb career, you can have a bomb marriage, your children are going to be perfectly mannered, you just out here winning at every single thing. If that's not true for us, and we don't even have the responsibility to lead a family, imagine the messages they are getting as men. And if we are not supporting God's standard in their lives, that means that we're supporting the world's standard. Like, there is no in between. So if you don't choose to support God's expectation for them, then you're supporting the world's expectation, and they're already confused. I see all the people posting, oh, there's so many things preparing women for marriage, but there's nothing preparing men for marriage, because that's not their focus. No one even is teaching them how to be a man first. Then you throw in the fact no one's trying to teach them how to be a husband. They don't even know the things that a man is supposed to do. So then we marry them in this state of confusion, and expect them to have all of the right answers. And then they won't accept our help because we try to run things instead of just trying to help. And like Marsha said, sometimes the help is just hush. I believe in the hush ministry, and that was hard for me to learn. I had to stop with the told you so, and learn how to just be quiet and let God do his part. So I'm going to kind of switch a little bit, because we do have two ladies on here that have experienced this. But what happens when divorce is the right decision? We talk a lot about when not to get divorced. That divorce is not pleasing to God. But what happens when it's the right decision? We know that biblically, what the Bible says is that God will allow you to offer up a decree of divorce if there is infidelity. So I have a couple of things that I want to add to this before I hand it over to Marsha and Lanice. But biblically, right, I want to just break this down, because I talk about this a lot, but I think we miss this part. So marriage is supposed to be until death does you part, right? That was God's original design. You were supposed to come together, be fruitful and multiply, and all of these wonderful things. But as human beings, sin comes into the world, and so things happen. So we also know that God's direction to Adam and Eve was not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or they would surely die. So if you study your word, or if you don't and you want to go back and read, you can in the book of Genesis about God saying if they ate of that tree, they would die. So death is not Well, somebody's asking, how do you get through to the hush ministry? We'll talk about that shortly. Death is not only a physical death. Yes, that is part of it. And if your marriage does last to that point, then you become a widow. But there's also a spiritual death that comes where there's a separation from God, and there are certain characteristics that go along with that spiritual death. And this is when you start talking about abuse and abandoning your family. I think sometimes we put women in situations, and men too for that matter, that no longer desire to be in a marital commitment. And we keep telling them to pray for restoration. And if you guys know me, you know I will never tell anyone to get a divorce or to stay in a marriage, because I feel like you never know what all the parts are. But we need to be very careful, because people have died literally as a result of staying in marriages that we have pushed them to stay in, that are spiritually dead, where they're being abused and subjected to things that God never intended. So I want to hand it over to Marsha and to Lanice to talk about, like, what happens when divorce is the right decision. What does that look like?
So for me, I think, well, I told you guys at the beginning that my marriage was very short-lived. And when we got to the point where we knew that neither one of us were prepared for marriage, and it was just a complete mess, because I was so churchified, I did seek counsel from a set of marriage counselors at my church, actually. And so in that instance, we went to them and just kind of like laid everything out. And I remember it like it was yesterday. The counselors were very, very clear to us, saying, like, we are there. Of course, they're Christian counselors. They are for marriage. They advocate for marriage, and they believe that a relationship like ours could be restored. But the thing that they made it very clear is that although God created marriage, He stands by covenant. What He will not do is take your free will from you. That requires you to do the work that it takes to reestablish and reaffirm and restructure your marriage. And the counselor pretty much told us, from listening to you and listening to him and listening to the situation that you are in, unless you two are absolutely 100% fully into this to make it work, I can guarantee you that it's not going to work. And it was funny because, well, not funny, but it was interesting because even in their years of counseling, they, said, like, this is the first time we've ever, said to somebody, like, I don't know. Like, we don't know if this is salvageable. We don't know if this is something that you guys can overcome. And the thing that I had to come to grips with, because I carried a lot of shame just in that. And then I got to the point where, because I knew that I shouldn't have married him in the beginning, that now I got this extra, like, I gotta save face, I gotta make it work. And if I fast and pray, and if I do, you can't fast and pray somebody out of their free will. Like, I'm sorry, you can't do it. And so that was the thing that I had to come to grips with. Like, yes, God is a restorer, but that involves two people saying, okay, we're going to do whatever it takes. We're going to let the past be the past. We're going to deal with whatever issues we need to deal with, and we're going to fight for this. And you can't fight by yourself. So at the point when I realized that I had a fight, but I didn't have anybody in the ring with me, then what else was I supposed to do? And it's not like I, marched off to the courthouse like, yeah, I'm happy about this. But at the same time, I was at a breaking point. I was like, what else can I do here? And it took time, and it took people actually, like, imparting wisdom into me, and most of all, like, helping me understand the grace of God. Like, the grace of God, like, divorce is not something that God is like, you just have ruined it in my book. Like there's no salvation, there's no, and I had to allow God's grace to really lift that shame off of me and to understand like that was one part of my life, and that divorce doesn't get to dictate the rest of my life. And so I think if we had more people helping people to understand, and you understanding that divorce happens is in no way saying that you give people a permission to just walk out on their marriages anytime that they get ready. But at the same time, we have to understand, like, you keep telling people to stay, they can't, if the other person is not willing to do their part, it's not going to work. So
I would agree with everything that Marsha said. I was married. We were together years before we got married, and then our marriage lasted over 4 years, close to 5 years. And when we finally like went to the courthouse and did all that, it was just really weird because at one point when we were on the stage, on the stand, the judge was like, "Are you sure?" And I looked at him, he looked at me, and we both were like, we didn't know, because we really had love for each other. We had went to counseling. So let me just back up. And I heard someone say this before, and I loved it. There's always 3 sides. There's his side, my side, and then our story together. The story I have permission to share is mine. And so his perspective may be a little bit different than mine, but I know that we really had love for each other, and it was really, really a tough decision. Had we had godly different things, I don't know. But what I do know is that it happened. I do know that we did go to counseling. I do know that we went through, it was like a boot camp marriage retreat where you go out, and I mean, we did so much. And in the end, it wasn't enough yet. It just wasn't enough to save it. Verbally, we would say we wanted it, but emotionally and our actions didn't line up to wanting to save it. And it kind of goes with what Marsha was saying, is you can't make somebody, whether it was me or him, because I definitely had a lot of faults, make it work. And so really what happens is, and I've had people come to me, and I never encourage divorce. In fact, I hear my stories of how I really felt after that. I felt ashamed. I was embarrassed. I was confused. I was hurt. I went through depression. All the things. That's why God hates it. And then we had a daughter, not my biological daughter, but a daughter involved. About all that they suffer because they lose too. So it's just like, I don't know just to do it. You know what I mean? I would hope not. So I think what happens, what you do after that is really take inventory. Really deal with how you're feeling. Deal with that. And again, like I said, it's okay to mourn the loss, because that's what it is. And realize that God does have grace for you. And that although that may not have panned out the way you wanted to, understand that God, you have to forgive yourself. I didn't forget. It took me a long time to forgive myself for not living up to being the woman that I felt I could be, for not living up to the expectations that other people had, for not living up to, okay, I done got married and I failed in that. I looked at myself as a failure in that area. There was a lot of things that I had to deal with, and just having a support system really helps you. But I really took, when you think about after divorce, what then? You have to give yourself time to heal, give yourself permission to heal. You have to, and also, and the funny thing, at the end of our court date, when everything was official, we rode. He wasn't driving, his car had broke down. I took him home, everything. We had a conversation, it was just like, we're like, this is so weird. So we had a lot of emotions, and everybody has their own like roller coaster that they go through. So I had to reflect so that I could grow and learn, and really, like I said, I had to deal with what my part that I played into that, what I did wrong. Because it's so, I mean, he wrong, he didn't do right. It literally took me time to self-reflect and say, well, Lanice, what was your role in this? Have been a better wife. Why were you acting like a friend? Or why? There's a lot of things that I was not ready and prepared for, and we both were not ready to prepare for that together. We weren't mature enough to do it. And then the next thing is, I think you have to inspect so that you can, like what I was doing, inspecting the things that I needed to change, and then understand that I could be restored. I really had a hard time with that. And like I said, everybody is different, but I had to understand that restoration was a gift that God could give to me too, even though I felt like I had failed. And so, and the last thing I would say is, because this was really hard for me, I was like, man, I'm not a wife anymore. You know what I mean? Like it was a prize that I lost or something, and I didn't have that title anymore. So what does that mean? What does that look like? Especially because we had been living in sin, before we got married a long time, and then I was married that time, and then even after we got divorced for my birthday, we went to Florida together. I mean, we were just a mess, okay? So like, what did that look like when I really broke that soul tie? What did that look like when I really let that go? So I had to, like, y'all laughing at me. Y'all better leave me alone. I had to be okay with reinventing myself and be okay with what my life looked like after divorce. And that was difficult for me. And so I would say everybody's journey is different. But again, be okay to mourn the things that you lost, and then be okay with letting God restore you. And I guess, I don't know if I answered the question, but
no,
that's pretty much.
You did. And then the basketball game is on, and that's my quality time with my husband. So we're gonna kind of wrap it up a little bit. But I want to just touch on one little topic, and of course we'll probably have to do this again.
Oh, can I say one more thing really quick?
Yeah.
Real quick. And one thing, this is so powerful to me. Whatever is not transformed is transferred. And so I really had to get in a space, especially once I accepted the divorce, because it took me a while for that. Once I accepted that, if I did not allow God to restore me, if I did not allow God to speak to my heart, if I didn't pray about God, what's in the garden of my heart? What's wrong? What do I need to fix? That was just going to continue to transfer onto every relationship that I got into. So it wouldn't have mattered about the person if I wasn't willing to transform. Y'all better stop.
No, that's true. You always
I'm done.
No, you always got the little nuggets, Lanice. So someone said she missed it. She said whatever is not transformed gets transferred. So a lot of the stuff that you have not yet dealt with in marriage before marriage gets transferred into your marriage, and that is very true. Like, so we are out here acting crazy, searching people's cell phone, going through social media and all that stuff because of things that happened in our past, and not even things that necessarily happened to us, even things we saw in our parents. And I know for me that was huge. I want to kind of talk about something that we don't talk about enough in church, at least not after marriage, because we talk about it all the time before we get married, and it's sex. Don't have sex. Don't have sex. Don't have sex. So the reality is, I want to know, no, Kara, it was not. You meant to type no. Is sex in marriage really that important? Shalonda, you go first. So, of course, he gives the short.
I'm sorry, but I'll give an explanation. Aside from having 3 children, and reproducing and multiplying and that sort of thing, I think that's a capacity that we don't always get right. But if we're striving to honor Christ, that's the only capacity, or that's the only sex is intended for marriage. That's basically what I'm trying to say. God designed it for us to be intimate with our spouses, and it really brings about, when you think about it, that's why soul ties are created, because of that connection that we're able to experience with when we do have sex. But when I think for us, because I realized with postpartum and all that sort of things, without going too deep into it, that the lack of it was extremely, it can be emotionally damaging in your marriage. And just because men are most of the time wired differently, you may come across men that, you know, don't desire it as much as you do. But in most cases, that's the opportunity. I'm sorry, I hear like a scratching, but in most cases, that's the opportunity for us to share with our husbands intimately. And outside of marriage, that's not another capacity that we get to share with any other human. And it allows us, what's reproduced or the byproducts of intimacy within our marriages, opens us up to a whole nother realm that we get to experience with our husbands, emotionally, physically, and all those aspects. So I definitely say it is. And if even if it's in a even if you're in a relationship where you're not supposed to be having sex, or you ever tried to not have sex with the person after you started, realize that the absence of that, once it started, definitely you feel the lack of that type of intimacy. So without going too far into it, you know, I'm an advocate for sex. But yeah, it's definitely important to your marriage.
Marsha, what about you? Is it really that important? You're newlywed, so is it really that important?
I would say it is absolutely positively important. And I would agree with what Shalonda said wholeheartedly, and only add to it that God created sex between a husband and a wife for it to be worship unto him. And I want to experience worship being Christ, worshiping God in every capacity that there is. And if that means, you know, worship in church, worship by taking care of my body, worship by, you know, honoring the Lord with my finances, worshiping him by the way I treat each other, and worship him by having sex with my husband. Like, it's different capacities of that. And I think he understands that, and that's as close as you could it's as close as you could ever be, you know, to a person. And God understands the power and what that is designed to do. Sex is designed to bring you and your husband together in a spiritual way that you won't, that kind of connection, you won't experience that kind of connection in any other form of worship. And so, yeah, I absolutely, not just because I'm a newlywed, like even before then, I wasn't one of them like single women hating on married women because they can't have sex. Like, do it. So I wasn't, and it's a base desire. Like, God gave us that desire for a reason. And so now I couldn't see myself, doing whatever you did when you was in the world and having sex with whoever you had sex in the world, and then you marry your husband, and now you still, you just no. No. So yes, that's important. But one thing I would like to say as a newlywed in terms of sex is that you and your husband have to learn each other. And just because you have this, can you say vagina on the Zoom? I don't know, but you have, just because you both have the parts and the desire to be with each other like that, it is a process. Just like you had to learn how to drive, you had to learn how to cook, you had to learn how to read. Nobody just popped out knowing how to do everything. And so just for those newlyweds or those wives, those ladies that are single and anticipating having sex and being married and having sex, like, give yourself grace and give yourself time to learn each other and develop in your sex life. And no, you don't have to try it out before you marry somebody, whatever. The Lord got you. He knows he made all of that. He knows what you need and what you like, but it's not magic. Like, he gave you the parts. You have to make your sex life what you want it to be with your husband. So that's my spiel on that.
So I'm going to kind of close it out and say that we'll do this again because I know there's a lot of questions we need to get to, like I said, in the game is on. But
wait, I just have to say, even though they having sex, Shantae, it's important. I just say, don't leave the person who you talking about wives and waiting, sex and waiting right here, okay? I'm waiting and I can't wait. That's all. You can close it out. Don't be trying to leave me out of that important part. I ain't that.
Crazy.
Oh my goodness. Oh Lord, well, this is too much. But really, it is important. But I'm so glad that everybody said that it is important, because I think that there is so much attention paid to what you cannot do, like what you cannot do with your body, that we don't talk about what you can do. And I love that Marsha said learn each other, because we have this preconceived notion that because we're both saved and we both love the Lord, we're going to come together and it's going to be fireworks immediately. That's part of the journey and part of the fun of getting to learn each other's body. My husband and I will have been married 11 years in July, and there are still things that you learn about each other in exploration and learning to be together. And that process does make you become one. And we have to really stop letting the world make us think that sex outside of marriage is the best sex, because that's not true, because that's the sex that separates you from God. So how can that be the best? Mm-hmm. The sex that brings you closer to God between a man and his wife is the best sex. And I mean, for real. And I know that sometimes we have some things that have happened in our past, whether it was rape or molestation, or we may have struggled with masturbation or anything that may have tried to diminish the beauty and the holiness of sex between husband and wife, and that can cause a break. And I know as women, we are more emotional and not necessarily jumping right into the physical part. But again, that leadership and that trust in your family, learning to acquiesce at times, because you are a place, like your body is something that you have to offer to your husband. Again, it's not a reward, it's his right to have access to your body, and you to his. Like we don't talk about that a lot. We always talk about the wife's body belongs to the husband. The husband's body belongs to the wife too. So understanding what God has to say about marriage, and that it is meant for you to enjoy. It's not just to procreate and to have children. It is meant for you to enjoy each other fully, wholly, and completely. Like I said, I know Adam and Eve were just running around naked and unashamed and not handling business. So it's okay for you to enjoy that in your marriage. It's not nasty. It's not dirty. It doesn't separate you from God. It actually brings you closer to the Lord and to your husband. It's not a tool for manipulation. It's not for you to withhold to try to get your way. It don't even work like that, because everybody has a vagina. So you can say that. But what you have to offer to your husband is worship, and it's to honor him. So, like I said, I don't want to get in too deep. And we had a really good conversation tonight. We will do. I don't know what's going on in holiness, but we'll do this again. Let's make sure we have all the ladies on to give you a really good perspective of what marriage is like, what it could be like, and really dealing with the real stuff. So y'all have a great night. We love you. We have Bible study next Thursday, so it won't be a hangout like this. We're in the book of Ephesians, and we're going to be on Ephesians 5. Okay, so y'all make sure y'all join us at 7 o'clock next Thursday night, and then also for prayer on Monday morning at 5 a.m. Central Standard Time. We love you. Have a wonderful night, and we will see you soon. Thanks, ladies.